happy to bring you amazing artists and amazing people and great education as well. So today we're lucky enough to have Laura with us from South Dakota. She's going to talk about some internal layering and volume without losing length, maybe even do a little bit of styling, right? So,
yep, I think so.
Awesome. Well, it's a 3-time Behind the Chair nominee, right? That's
Yep.
awesome. Congratulations. Runner-up last year, right, for something as well. So
yep.
I'm just a big fan of your work. I can't wait to see what you have going on today. So thank you for coming on. If it wasn't for artists like yourself doing this, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. Have fun, and I'll be sitting in the background.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, guys, so I'm going to start off today. I already did my wet cutting on my doll head. So we started with just a 1-length bob, and I angled her forward just about 1 inch in the front. And so I feel like a lot of the time we get requests for haircuts like this, like blunt bobs, but there's something kind of missing with this, right? And we want to see layers and we want to see movement, but maybe we don't want to be stacking it up, or we don't want to give it maybe more of a dated bob or A-line appearance. So today I'm going to be showing you internal layers and invisible layers and ways to remove weight with your shears without actually layering up the hair and compromising the length. Because I feel like right now, bobs like that have a lot of movement but don't have a lot of layering going on in here are very, very on trend. And some of these techniques are what I use on my clients behind the chair. And I think you'll be able to take some of these and customize them to yourself. And, you know, let's see how it goes. So I started off behind the chair. I do the basic haircut wet. So with my little lovely model here today, I washed her and conditioned her, and then I cut her bob wet. We just did 1 length. She had some older layers in there from before, but today I just did a 1-length bob and angled it forward in the front, so it's about 1 inch longer down here. And then behind the chair, after I've done kind of the basic cut, I'll dry the hair just like a rough dry or a blowout, and then go through and finish the haircut dry, because I feel like you can see where the hair is going to live, and you can see how it's going to move when it's dry, and you have more control over texturizing dry. When it's wet, it's really easy to take out too much, and then when you get it dry, you can see that you've cut holes in the haircut, or the texture is not living where you want it to live, and it's not moving the way you want it to move. So we'll start with a little bit of weight removal in the back here. You can see how it kind of comes out. I call that kind of like the triangle hair. And a lot of girls, especially if they have thick hair, you know, you get a lot of bulk underneath here, but maybe they want the length over at the top. So we're going to work on weight removal right now without layering up the back. We're going to keep the top layers long, but get this so that it's laying smaller, closer to her head shape. And it'll just give a more modern, flattering bob look. So we'll start, I'll section her out. When I'm doing this on a client, we focus under the occipital bone. That's where you're going to be removing the weight. I won't really go above the occipital because I don't want it to be something that we're going to see. We want to remove weight, make it easy for the client to style her hair and get the look that she wants, but not have it show on the outside of the cut. So I'm sectioning off behind her ears. So we leave this little safety net right here, right? We don't want to cut that out because then we'll create a big hole in her bob. So sectioning off behind her ears, find the occipital, and get it sectioned off. Keep our safety net there. So you can see I have a ton of hair up here. That will be laying over the haircut, so you won't see all of this weight that I'm going to remove, but it will make it lay really small. So So there's a couple ways that I like to do this. I'm left-handed, so I'm gonna actually be switching sides so you guys can see. But if you're right-handed, just like make the according adjustments. Okay, so there's a couple ways that I'll remove weight here. You can do it either with your shear or with your thinning shear.
Have fun.
So
Anybody, guys, if you have questions, just send those questions over to me and I'll facilitate them. The picture looks great on my end. Audio sounds great. Have fun.
Good. Yeah, I'm so excited. Thanks, guys. Okay, so here's a way that I like to remove with thinning shears. Mostly when I use my thinning shears, I'm using it to like texturize out the ends, create piecey movement. But here's another way that you can use your thinning shears to remove weight and remove bulk back here where you're not going to need it for this cut. So I section out in a little triangle section and pull it out at a 90 degree. I think it's been a while since I've been in beauty school, so hopefully I'm saying the right degrees. And then when you're going in with your thinning shears, remember, you want to see the hair bend. You don't want to cut before the hair bends. Otherwise, if you cut it, you know, closer to the scalp before you get that bend in the hair, then it will poke up and you'll create actually more work for your client to get it to lay down. They'll be fighting with that instead of it being something that's going to be helping them with their cut. So section out, make sure it's bending appropriately, and then remove that weight. I'll try to turn so you can see it kind of debulk. And then triangle section again. Lift it up straight away from the head. Make sure it's bending below your fingers. And texturize, texturize, texturize. Okay, so if you can see, it's kind of laying a little smaller now, but we didn't create layers really. She still has some weight there to hold that down. I'm going to go in right here too, still leave some of this safety net, but you can see, if you look at it straight on, that this is laying smaller and then this is still bulky, kind of like a puppy dog ear is what I like to call it. So section out and remove that weight. It's like almost like an undercut, but not a full undercut, you know. If they're very bulky, sometimes I will just go in with my shears and take that off so that they don't have weight there. But this is kind of a safe way until you figure out what you're comfortable with. This is a safe way to remove this weight, get that laying small, and get her nape looking not bulky, just smooth down. Okay, so if you can kind of see, this is laying a lot smaller right through here. And we'll start moving up the haircut now. We're going to be adding a lot of texture, a lot of internal movement, internal layers, so that when she styles it, when she curls it, she'll get those piecey movements, like piecey little like flips that she can really enhance or, you know, hide if she just straightens it. And not so much like a bulky, super classic bob. This is more of a modern bob. Okay, so I could also go in and do just what we did with the thinning shears here, do that again, because she has enough thickness on top that it will lay over and hide. But instead, I'll show you a different technique that I also like to do to remove weight and add texture and movement. And this one I'll just do with my regular shear. And I'll pick up a horizontal section above where we just debulked. Make sure when you do this, the hair is bending. So I'm not going to go in here. I won't go in, you know, closer than 2 inches to the scalp. Otherwise, it will poke up and create volume that we don't want. So let's see. I'm going to try to do this so you guys can see it. And I slide cut down. Slide cut, slide cut, slide cut. Let it fall out of your fingers. And you won't take too much out. Horizontal section, again, make sure we're bending right here. And just really, like, I'm taking a lot of the hairs out, but you aren't gonna see cut marks in there. It's gonna be pretty seamless when it's straight. And then it'll be piecey and textured when she waves it out or puts any texturizing product in it. Okay, another section right here. Slide cut down. Now for this section, since we have this good safety net under her ears, you can go over the ear in this part because we have enough hair covering her ear here that you're not going to cut a hole in it. Just make sure you're keeping your little safety nets there. Follow those kinds of rules and then keep going. Okay, so we'll do another horizontal section, piece it out. Over here, I'm going a little lower and focusing mostly on the bottom 2 inches of her hair now to create piecey movement, but not as much remove weight. We're creating movement more than we're removing weight right now. And I'm cutting on the downstroke when I'm moving in, not so much cutting up.
Laura, when you were over the ears there, when you were thinning over the ears, what direction were you going with the hair?
Forward. I'm cutting
Correct.
Forward.
Okay.
So towards her face, I'm angling it towards her face. Because this haircut also is kind of focused more towards the face, you know, that's why I'm going this way. If we were doing more of like a shag or something that had a lot of face layers, you know, lots of movement around the face, then I would be cutting backwards. You cut in the direction that you want the hair to go. The short hair is going to push the long hair, right? So since this is a bob, it's going to be a lot of the focus is around length around the face and texture.
Beautiful.
We cut toward.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Good question. Okay, so I'm going to do just a little more of that type of texturizing through the tips, and then we'll do a little bit of a different texturizing technique after. And I'm just getting like lighter and lighter as I go up, you know, not so much heavy texturizing on the outside. You still want that movement, but you want the length and the weight too to be keeping the hair cut down and giving it the correct shape. If it was a really textured, piecey bob, like shattered out, I would be heavier going up in this direction, like up into this part of the haircut. But since it's going to be mostly, it's like the illusion of a one length bob, but it's not a one length bob, then we just mostly focus the texturizing on the ends as you get up into this horseshoe section. And I'm angling my scissors, you know, almost all the way down towards me. That keeps the texture and the weight that we're removing. It's really pointy, really pokey. I'm not cutting across at all. It's all down. So I'm just cutting little strands at a time. It's not huge amounts of weight that I'm removing all at once. It's like small amounts of weight that make a big difference at the end. Okay, so now that we're up here in the horseshoe, I'll just do a little bit of point cutting I might go back through and add a little more of that texturizing I was showing you. So let's turn her a little this way. So I'll just point cut, keeping it in the bottom 2 inches of the haircut. The shears are perpendicular to my fingers so that I'm cutting small amounts a lot. Okay, so now we'll move to the sides, and then I'll show you some of my volumizing internal work at the end that will create volume that they don't have to work for, they don't have to be backcombing a ton for at the very end. I like to do that last when I'm almost all the way done.
When you're slide cutting, visually, where you first start cutting as you're sliding, that's where you want the layers to land vision. So that's all visual for you, correct?
For me, yes, it's visual. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And that's why I cut dry too, is because it's a very visual, cutting is very visual. So I like to see where it's going to live. When it's dry, you're going to see where the hair lives. So to me, like to do a really good haircut, I need to be finishing it dry. Right. So I do like 30% of my haircut wet, unless it's a really precision one, then I'll do like 100% wet and then finish and do like little tiny or 95 wet and then 5% dry. But perfect. On a really textured cut, you know, we're doing like 70% of a dry cut and 30% just getting the basic shape in when it's wet. Okay, so over the ears, you know, we keep this little safety net around the ears because that hairline is weird, so you have to be careful of it. So when I'm texturizing out here, then I'm going in from the underside. So bottom 1.5 inches here, I'm going up perpendicular again to my fingers and straight up and down. I'm like softening that line, but it's still pretty solid. You know, it's going to be obvious that it's there, but it's just a little softer. It's not going to be bulky. Okay, and then through the sides, you know, this is where our clients have the least amount of density. So I always try to be really careful when I'm adding texture and weight through the sides here. If they have very thick hair, you can be a little more aggressive, but a lot of people have fine or medium hair, so you have to be careful when adding texture through these sides so that you're not cutting a hole or you're creating more work for them on their side.
Is this a technique you could use on longer hair as well, Laura?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I'm doing it with long hair, if her hair was down to here, I would do just basically the same thing. Probably staying a little lower. I probably wouldn't go quite up to the bend in her hair unless she really wanted some of that movement. I usually would probably stay around the jawline and then just slide through a little bit. And I would just do it lightly so that when you shake her hair, you see movement through this area instead of all down here. You would still see it moving up through here, but you wouldn't be creating, you know, any unevenness that she would be fighting with later.
Great.
If she had layers, then it would be different. You could definitely go in and piece it out a lot, get those layers really moving. But if she's a long hair girl and likes it to look visually mostly long, then I stay pretty like around the jaw or mid neck and just remove a little bit of that weight so it's still moving. You see stuff going on up in here, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so lightly go through and remove the weight and add texture. See a little bit here that I can do. And then really letting the shears do the work, and where the hair catches on the shears, then that's how, then that determines what gets removed. You can go in from the bottom again and soften up that line. Continuing to remove weight and add texture. And then leaving this up top so we can add volumizing internal work at the very end. Okay, so let's take a look. Can you guys see a difference with how that's laying through this side, which we just finished, and this side, which we haven't texturized at all yet? This kind of concaves back in towards her jaw, creates a really flattering look on her, and then also is moving a lot more through this area, whereas this one, bulky, just lays there. So now we're gonna do the same thing on this side. Going through, texturizing the bottom inch, inch and a half, perpendicular to your fingers. Not removing weight around the ears, we're keeping that safety net. The way I determine my safety net too is you don't want to be seeing the top of her ears. If you're seeing through her hair to the top of her ears, you need more weight on top, otherwise you'll totally cut a hole accidentally and it'll be a bummer. She might not know, but you'll know. Moving up with her hair, I'm taking about 3/4 of an inch to an inch horizontal sections. Depending on the weight and the density, you might want to do more or less. If her hair is super fine, I take thicker, as far as the scalp goes, it'd be a thicker section. If her hair is very thick, I would be taking smaller sections. You always want to be in control of the hair. And also know, you know, what type of hair you're working with. So whether you would want to be taking a thick section so you're not totally hollowing out the integrity of her length, or whether you need a thin section because you're not going to be able to get through it all if her hair is really thick. Okay, last section, and then we'll start a little bit of point cutting through the top, and I'll do my volumizing internal work, which is like kind of my signature with my clients. They all expect it. They all feel like they see a difference afterwards. So. Make sure you're moving your client's head as well and not your body when you're doing a cut. Because long term, I've been doing hair 14 years, so if you do that, move your body to them instead of moving them to you, you'll be having serious back and shoulder issues like we already all will. But okay. I leave the top small horseshoe out, and I don't usually go in too heavy unless we're creating a really, really textured bob, because I want this to lay over and have all of her like textured work be internally. So it'll poke out when she styles it. She'll get that piecey movement, but it's not a totally textured hollowed out bob. Okay, so then check her. This needs a little more texture. Okay, so now go through, check your bob, make sure you're lining up, it visually kind of matches on each side. She's looking pretty, she really likes it. And then this is how I do my internal layering for volume through the top. Then she's not having to back comb, she's not having to work really, really hard to get this volume. So you section out around the top of that horseshoe. There's a couple different ways that you can do this. For me, I kind of flip my shears around and I put my, let's see, index finger through your thumb hole. And you flick it. When you flick up, it opens your shear. When you flick down, it closes your shear. So I learned this on a mannequin. I would suggest you practice on a mannequin first before you get used to it, or before you go trying it on your clients, because you can, you know, take all the integrity out of the length that way. And I've done it before, so just start on mannequin. So open and shut. And what this does is you're cutting just tiny, tiny little hairs, like two or three hairs at a time. You can maybe see them falling down. And those short hairs are gonna push up the layers on the top and create volume for you that you don't have to work for. And then drop that section down, pick it up again. You don't wanna be able to see through your section. You still want this to lay over it because you don't want them to know it's there. It's like a little secret. And open, close, open, close. I do it just a couple times down the length of the hair. And it just takes out just a couple little pieces, but they really do make all of the difference. And your client sees it, you'll see it. If you're not ready to go in and do it this way, I love doing it because I think it looks fancy, but if you're not ready for that, you can definitely go in just with the regular shear hold and just snip, snip, like 2, 3 little hairs at a time. Less is more. You don't want to do too much. So then I go through and I do it on the sides. Removing weights, creating volume that they're not having to work for. Try to get my arms out of the way. Just a little bit. It's like creates a tiny little bit of texture. Mostly you're creating volume. Those little short guys push up the long guys, and then they get that tousled, sexy, undone bob that they don't have to work very hard for. So we all don't want to work harder for our gorgeous hair, right? So for somebody with fine hair and really, really light-handed with this, maybe just a couple little hairs here and there. With somebody with thick, heavy hair, I get in there and I do it a little more, and it's just very visual. Make sure you can't see through your section before you go in. And a little snip, snip, snip. Let's check her out. Then I kind of like show them, you know, short pushes long. So I get in there and I say, oh, do you see that volume? Isn't that different? Do you like that? Okay, so that's our textured semi one length bob, or invisible layered bob. I'll go through now and I'll do just a flat iron curl. This is the way I curl most of my clients, with medium, shorter length hair. And I also teach them how to do it so that it's easy for them to get the looks that I create for them behind the chair at home. So section out the horseshoe. If their hair is thick, then I'll do another section back here. But with a bob haircut, you don't need to be getting under here and curling, because all of this length is going to lay over the top. And if you curl under here, you're just going to create volume in an area they don't want it to be in. So leave it alone. Okay, so this is the way I do my flat iron curls. When I'm telling my clients how to do it, I'm usually comparing it to curling ribbon with scissors. You know, when it's Christmas time and you want to curl your ribbons and you bend them over the scissors, that's the way I teach my clients how to curl their hair. A lot of times I think when they're struggling with it, they're usually bending their wrist too much and like turning their wrist too much. And then you get those weird kinks and those weird bends in the hair. And then they decide that they can't do flat iron curls and they hate them. So after I do that, then I twist the curl up in the direction that I curled it in, and I flat iron that curl. I flick the end out so that it's straight, and then do that. Twisting it up like that and flat ironing it, it kind of crushes the curl and creates a textured movement instead of a princess curl. And then just leave them all in the curl pattern until you're all the way done. I always curl away from the face, but then once I'm back from the face, I'll go back and forth. That kind of creates more volume, makes it more undone. And I don't really like measure, I don't section out my flat iron sections with clips or anything like that. It's all visual. The sections are super messy, but I kind of like messy undone hair, like obviously. So that's the way I do it. It's just freehand undone. Back and forth with the texture.
So all of that cutting you did was all with all that should be taken into account when how you're styling it as well, correct? That's
Definitely.
part of the reason, to add that texture, to add that movement, to give that complete look, to be styled this way at the end.
Definitely. You can also style it straight, you know. It definitely gives like it's an undone haircut, a textured movement haircut. It doesn't have to be waved though. You can definitely wear it just natural. You can go beachy with it. You can straighten it out because we didn't hollow her length out. We didn't add a bunch of layers so that it'll look like chunky with her piecing movement. It's all really, really light. So you can wear it really any direction or any style that you want, any texture. It will, if they are flat ironing it though, the texture, it's going to be more undone. It's not going to be a precision haircut. It'll be more like organic, more tously, kind of tousled sexy instead of like super classic sexy.
Perfect.
And I take kind of big sections because I just want like less is more. I don't want a ton of wave and curl, just like a gentle bend and movement. I always curl away from the face, at least at the first curls, but then you can kind of go back and forth. Don't worry about like these little guys sticking out right here if it looks weird or anything like that. I always just wait till I'm all the way done, and then I'll just go through and tuck them with my flat iron so that the client's not fighting with them. Like that little guy, just go and tuck it again.
What do you have your flat iron set at?
This one just is, it doesn't have an adjustable temperature. This is the GHD Platinum, so it just heats right up to 375. Usually I stay around 375, 385 for most everybody. I don't usually go higher than that. If they're finer, I'll go lower than that, like 350. This is my at-home flat iron. So I have an adjustable one at the salon that I use. If I have little like tangles and loops of hair in there, I will finger comb it. I don't usually, unless I'm really trying to make it straight, I don't usually use a comb with my flat iron because I feel like it really slows me down and then I'm adding like way more heat to the hair than I need to. So most of the time I just like freehand it. And almost all the time I suggest to my client, like, don't hold your comb under your flat iron because it's going to slow you way down and then you're like cooking your hair. And your hair's going to be sad after a while of you doing that. So comb the section first if you want to, but. Okay. So now we've curled her all the way. I let it cool, or I'll finish with some, working spray or hairspray. And then I go through and I just shake it out.
You take some pictures of this and post them on your Instagram later, like an after?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
All right. Yeah, and then if you'll send them over to me, we'll share them as well.
Perfect. I love that. That'll be great. Okay, so you see I have these little guys here. Like, I don't really like those. My clients probably don't really like those. So after I'm all the way done, I'll go in and just check it and tuck it a little more so it hides a little better. And if I still feel like there's too much wave after that, then I'll just go through and like lightly flat iron it just to loosen that out. Flat iron curls always stay so well, which is like good or sometimes not good depending on how well their hair takes the curl.
So as we're bringing this down, does anybody have any questions? I feel like we got to most of them, or you answered most of them live without me even needing to ask.
Good. I was hoping so. I was trying to make it informative. So.
Yes. Great job. Fantastic. Yeah. I'm a fan of messy hair though, so I'm probably.
Me too. I love just undone, super tousled, sexy hair. I think there's just nothing better. So,
Definitely.
So that's like what most of my clients come to me for that too. This kind of cut too, you can part it any direction. You don't really have to worry so much about it getting like too heavy on one side, or, you know, sometimes if you have a really layered bob, it'll look really unbalanced. If you side part it, you don't have to worry about that as much with this because the layers are so light. It's mostly movement that we created, not so much traditional layering. So really versatile and flattering.
This is something you're doing a lot of, obviously, right? I mean, you're not just throwing this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And a lot of my, they just requested it a lot over the last 4 or 5 years. So I had to learn all those texture techniques.
Right. Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. Again, if it wasn't for artists like yourself, we wouldn't be able to do this. All right. So.
Thank you. I'm really, really happy to have done it. It was so fun.
Yeah, my pleasure. And if you could just share some of those after pictures with us.
Absolutely.
What's your Instagram again, in case anyone wants?
I forgot to tell you. I realized I'm Laura Does My Hair on Instagram.
Okay. And I'm going to end with this. You get the last 15 or 20 seconds to give whatever message you want to give. Other than that, thanks for coming on.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. It really means a lot to me. I've been passionate about education for years and years. So thank you for joining me today. And I hope you're all safe and happy and healthy out there. Okay. Laura Does My Hair on Instagram. Thanks, guys.